Well, hello everyone. That was pretty loud on my end, at least. Welcome to Transcendent Philosophy. This is Seth here, and we got Stephen, our expert on all things anime, philosophical, and Mormon.
Well, you forgot Nietzsche, but yeah.
And Nietzsche.
Not all anime. I still feel like a novice a lot of the times, but I love anime. That's why I moved to Japan, because I love anime so much. So
Nice.
I kept so yeah, I made 2 videos on Vinland Saga. So this is something I definitely have some interest in. It's actually my first Vinland Saga video is my most successful video so far. And
Yeah,
I was really shocked how successful that got, especially when season 2 came around. And so I thought I think it's a very interesting show. It's got a lot of real life Vikings in it. Like Thorfinn apparently was a real Viking at one point, and you have Leif Erikson, the guy who discovered America, and lots of other people. I'm not a history expert. I'm just an anime expert. I just know some people are in the show are based on real people.
yeah, that was a super cool detail to learn. After I think I watched the first season of Vinland Saga, and I was just too curious. I Googled, is this based on, historical figures, or is it all fake?
Well, yeah, from what I understand, the story is not based on like a true story, but it uses characters that a lot of its characters are from real history.
Right. It's more, if you were to guess the percentage that it is historical, what would you guess?
I'm guessing not a lot. Like from what I understand, Thorfinn probably never went to America, like the real life one. I mean, it's really history that trying to go that far back in history gets very sketchy and iffy, and you're not entirely sure what kind of details are true. I mean, again, I'm not a historian, so I couldn't give you an exact percentage, but I'd say the majority of the story is fictional.
Right.
I don't think it's based on true events. But from what I understand, I think Thorfinn was like, at one point in his life, he converted to Catholicism. So like there were some like real Christian themes going on, but
yeah, that was
I'm not. I know there's this one YouTube channel where he actually like goes through the various people in Vinland Saga and talks about the real life counterparts. That I watched a couple of those, but it's been a while. I'll have to rewatch those.
Right. Can you tell what my background is right here?
Yeah, that's Vinland right there.
Vinland.
That's America.
Yeah, the promised land, the Viking promised land.
The Viking promised land. So
cool.
Yeah,
I was wanting to see if you could kind of give us a summary, because what we're going to do here, we're going to summarize the video, or we're going to summarize the first 2 seasons pretty quick, and then we're going to start diving into like some of the ethical dynamics that that play out. So do you want to try to get us started on that?
All right. So Vinland Saga begins. Hang on, let me bring up something real quick.
Bless you.
Yes, thank you. I don't know why, but I've been getting been pretty coffee lately. I've had a pretty terrible cold, and then
that's what happens.
It kind of went off the deep end.
That's what happens when you teach kids. When you're at school, the kids, they just circulate all the viruses.
I don't think it was that. I'm pretty sure it was the expired food I ate. So,
okay.
But anyways, okay, here we go. So Vinland Saga takes place in the Scandinavian countries between 1002 to 1013 AD. So yeah, we're talking pretty a good while back, not super far back, but we start on Iceland, right? And there's this little boy named Thorfinn, and he dreams about going on adventures and slaying dragons and all that. And his father is this very famous Viking who's like known to be unbeatable, and he was once a proud Viking, but he escaped to Iceland with the love of his life and have just a peaceful life. But then, you know, then his old comrades come and try to invite him back into the war, and that's when he gets a group of young men to go out and sort of try to defend themselves. And so they go out on the ship, but unbeknownst to most of the I don't know if I'm recapping this very well. It's been a little bit since I saw the first, but just to give a really brief, there's this one guy who was an old companion of Thor's who plots to kill because he deserted his men during this one battle. And so Thorfinn is super angry at the Vikings that killed him, and so he joins, get his chance to kill their leader, Askeladd. Tries to challenge him to a duel, fails, and he just kind of becomes a part of the Viking crew, and he goes on this long journey where he tries to get more and more opportunities to kill Askeladd in sort of a valiant way in a duel instead of just killing him. And Askeladd takes advantage of this and tricks him into killing other people for him. It's like, oh, if you kill this one guy, I'll let you duel me. So Thorfinn just turns into this ferocious killing machine. But then Askeladd dies at the hands of Canute, and this just throws Thorfinn off way because he wanted to kill Askeladd. So he charges Canute, but then he gets taken into slavery for trying to kill the king. And so then that's where season 2 picks up with where he's being a slave, and then Canute, meanwhile, is building up his empire bigger and bigger, trying to make a utopia, but killing a lot of people along the way. Eventually, he makes his way to the farm where Thorfinn is being a slave and tries to take the farm. And Thorfinn goes to try to confront Canute, but he's got to take on 100 blows from these Vikings, and then until finally he's able to stand up and be like, I didn't fight back because I have no enemies. And so he goes up to Canute and talks to him and tries to convince him to give up his dream of a utopia and he's like, Thorfinn says that he's going to build a utopia in Vinland without violent means, and that he's going to, if violence comes his way, he's just going to run away from it and keep running. And this somehow convinces Canute to give up on his utopia dream, and he significantly reduces his army, and that's about where Vinland Saga season 2 ends. I hope that I did that. I hope I did this story somewhat justice. There's lots of details, of course, I ran over, but we can talk a little bit more into those details as we continue on this conversation. But that's the gist of it. And then the manga carries on after that. There's the Baltic War arc where it sort of tests Thorfinn's newfound morals and asks how much is he willing to run away from violence. What happens when his past catches up to him and people want revenge for his past deeds. And
wow.
Yeah, and then they are trying to gather supplies to go to Vinland, and then after that they actually do go to Vinland, and Thorfinn has a wife and a kid, and so they go, and I'm not entirely sure what happens when they get to Vinland. What happens when they meet the natives. I didn't get that far into my research yet, but that's sort of the gist of what happens after the slave arc.
Right. Nice. I didn't know all that. I've only seen up to season 2. So that's a nice little teaser.
Yeah, that's the teaser.
Right. So I wanted to introduce, I guess there's a couple things that I read into the plot, some like some archetypes and stuff. I wanted to bounce off
Hmm.
my reading of the plot to you to see what you think. Um,
Sure.
yeah, so one of the key things that I think, so Thorfinn, he has this massive transformation of character, right? And
Yeah.
he kind of adopts this like passivism that is almost just like it's a 180-degree shift, and it's so I feel like they don't fully articulate all of his thought processes as he migrates. A lot of it is like some unconscious shifting of thought processes, it seems.
Hmm.
Does that seem fair?
Oh, definitely. He really makes a really big transition from being all about war and revenge to suddenly being like, you know what? I just need to embrace my father's wisdom and say that I
Right.
have no enemies and just try to live as peaceful a life as I can. And so it's a huge flip that he makes. It's huge 180-degree turn.
Right.
But
Right.
I think they do it. They slowly. It's not like a crazy dramatic shift that happens in the middle of the story. They really build up to it, and it
Totally.
makes
Totally.
sense in the moment.
So
I mean, yeah.
I'm trying to figure out. There's two angles I want to go. I'm trying to figure out which angle is better to
Hmm.
go. I think it's
There's
better to go the
there's so
arc.
many angles to go with this.
Oh, totally. So I'm going to go the archetype
Hmm.
angle first. Okay, archetypes, right?
Sure.
Um, so archetypes, they're kind of like patterns of character, like different personality types, and you can ratchet up like how extreme someone is. They could be an extreme version of an archetype, right?
Hmm.
And and so what I want to build up right now, I want to build up the Thorkel archetype and the Thorfinn archetype, right? And
Yes.
so
Okay. Yeah.
the I'm putting these two as rivals, and the show is contrasting these two archetypes. So Thorfinn is the main character, and he goes from like revenge all the way over to peace, right? He becomes the archetype of peace
Hmm.
and nonviolence. And so what I would bucket him as is a Christian extremist. He takes Jesus's logic of love your enemies, turn the other cheek, do good to them that hurt you. He takes the Jesus
Hmm.
philosophy and ratchets it up to an extreme level. Does that seem fair?
I'd say so. Yeah. Yeah.
And so to
He re-
contrast that,
he
keep
doesn't
going.
quite go full like Christian, I guess you could say, but he definitely goes the extreme with the philosophy of it.
Yeah, yeah. Christian philosophy extremist,
Like
something
he
like
doesn't
that.
quite get baptized and be like go around with a Bible and be like I'm Christian, but yeah, he definitely takes up the philosophy to a great degree, especially after he's listening in to his master when he's a slave, listening to his master read the Bible and listening to how Jesus is talking about in the Sermon on the Mount to love your enemies and to do good to them that persecute you, and all
E-
that really hits him hard.
Exactly. Definitely. But one thing I think is so fascinating about Vinland Saga is it seems like they're constantly trying to contrast Christianity with like the Viking religion. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And so,
definitely, because you have
so
you have Valhalla and heaven, and
yeah,
it almost seems like one would be hell for the other, and one is heaven for the other.
well
It's
said.
like
Well
if
said.
you're a Viking, you'd probably think that the Christian heaven is hell, but if you're a Christian, you'd think the Viking heaven is hell.
Mm. That's such a Mormon way to put it, right?
Well, that's what I am. So, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's how they portray it in the show. Is like when Thorfinn has his dream of going to
Mhm.
the Viking hell, or sorry, Valhalla. When he dreams about going to Valhalla, he sees it's just a dark pit. All these the guys that are down there, they don't seem like miserable at all, but they definitely seem like they're mad with bloodlust, and they're trying to kill each other in it, but they won't die, and so it's like they're just fighting this endless battle, and it just horrifies Thorfinn to no end. And it's like, okay, I need to climb out of this pit because I don't want to be down here. I don't want to be constantly trying to kill people. I want to actually live a peaceful life. And it's an even if you don't believe in any kind of afterlife, it's still an interesting idea that your desires create your reality. If all you want to do is fight, then you're going to live in a hellish landscape.
But your point is they might view that hell as desirable, right?
Right. They might. And Vikings back then did. They thought, oh, that would be so awesome if I died with my axe in my hand and I went to a afterlife where I did nothing but fight people with my axe. That was a super ingrained thing with Viking culture.
That's a perfect segue to Thorkel, the archetype of the Viking extremist. This guy is a massive giant of a human, and he is just obsessed with love for battle. He's always constantly bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
And at first, he's presented as a simpleton. And Thorkel himself is like, have these Vikings lost their mind? Why is he so excited about shedding blood? But as you watch the show, you're starting to see his mindset, and he just takes the Viking religion to the extreme.
And he's just an absolute beast of a guy. I mean, when you first meet him, he's freaking chucking like giant stakes at ships, and you're like, holy crap, this guy's a monster.
Literally. But Thorkel, his personality.
But Thorfinn is able to take him on pretty well, and even though they both get really scraped up when they fight. Like Thorfinn, he takes off his fingers and he takes out his Thorkel's eye, but he's still like, man, this is awesome. Let's keep fighting.
Yeah, exactly. Thorkel is, he's totally ecstatic about getting his fingers chopped off. He's waving his bloody hand. He's like, let's do this again sometime. Like the whole concept of eternal bloodshed, that's like his heaven. Like that's what he loves. Yeah, you nailed it. But the other thing I want to emphasize about Thorkel is it's not just purely bloodlust. Like he's offended when people don't go to Valhalla. Like the concept of his enemy being a coward is offensive. He'll scold the enemy, say, "Come on, pick up your weapons." Like I don't want to rob you of your chance of Valhalla. I want to kill you during an act of bravery so I can send you to heaven. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in his own twisted way, he's trying to maximize happiness. He's trying to maximize Valhalla.
Well, what's interesting is you could say he's trying to maximize his own happiness, not caring about anybody else's happiness.
But don't you think he cares that other people go to Valhalla?
Well, he wants to go to he cares about other people going to Valhalla so much as it satisfies his own self, his own desire and need for battle. It's not like he's out here preaching the gospel of preaching the gospel and trying to convert people. Like, yeah, he preaches the gospel, but he only wants to convert people so far as it benefits himself, kind of an idea. If you're a Christian and you don't want to fight him, too bad. He's going to force you to fight. Because he only cares about his own personal happiness. Right. So he'll force you into it.
But there's a couple points in the show where he doesn't attack the Christians, right? Canute, he decides to serve Canute. He doesn't attack the priest.
Well, that's because he respects Canute so much. He's like, oh man, this guy is like, I don't know, just something about him is just like, you got to respect him because Canute, as soon as he makes this 180 transition from being this super effeminate coward who's just running away from everything to suddenly like standing up to his problems. It's like, oh wow, you gotta respect that to make
Yeah,
such a crazy transition.
for sure. Right. But to
Like
me,
he's also
maybe
an
you,
entirely different character. So I think a lot of that comes back to respect. You always respect
Mhm.
people that respect yourself, that respect themselves. And
Yeah,
especially if you put up this big affront to them and you stand up to them, then that's instead of cowering away, then you always have to respect that. Even from
uh,
a hardened warrior like Thorkel. And Thorkel himself, even though he's obsessed with battle and all this, he still follows Canute because Canute himself will provide him with battle.
that's
There's
right.
this
And he get
interesting segment where in the Baltic War arc
Mhm.
where Canute, as soon as he's disbanded his army and he's like done with killing people and all that, Thorkel gets super bored and he just barges into this random person's house like, I need to battle somebody. Somebody fight me. And so
yeah,
yeah, he's only following Canute because he believes it'll get him more battles.
that is true. But tell me if I'm wrong. I think that the point where Canute uh, earned Thorkel's respect was when Canute proved that he was willing to die. Like someone was about to kill him, and he wouldn't evade the attack. Was
Yeah,
that the is
absolutely.
that the turning point?
I'd say so because like I mean the thing you got to understand about Canute is he was like super unloved by his father. He was always treated as a weakling and like he was super into Christianity and all that, but he and all that, but then he had this sit down conversation with this priest talking to him about what is love. And so this was like the big philosophical moment of season 1 is it's like, oh, love isn't everything that we know to be love is just how do I say it? To truly love somebody, you can't like love what we love know as love is what is the word I'm looking for? Um it's like
Uh-oh.
you remember what I'm talking about, right? Um
I'm a
like
little
when
lost.
it's sort of favorism, you know? Don't you remember the scene? It's sort of like love is can be considered favorism. It's not what
Oh,
we think is
okay.
love. Like when a
Yeah, yeah,
father
yeah,
loves a
yeah, yeah.
son, he's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
put
yeah.
all his resources into the son and not care about anybody else. And it's sort of
For
like
sure,
that's
for
not
sure.
love. That's favorism. That's you're oppressing these other people for the sake of this one person, and that's what we usually call that love. And so it's like the ultimate thing is like, oh, the only way you can be truly all loving is if you're dead, because then that's when you just surrender to everything, and you let beasts eat you, and you don't complain about the cold, you don't complain about anything, you just let things happen to you, kind of a thing, and you just become food for the earth. And so it's like,
Right.
oh, it's sort of morbid when you think about it, but that is what causes Thor. That's what causes Canute to have this massive transition. He's
Right,
like,
right,
oh,
right.
okay,
He
I'm just,
learned what
I
he
just
learned
need
what
to,
true love was.
yeah. And he's like, I just need to fully embrace whatever situation I'm in and make the best of it instead of constantly running away.
I'm trying to figure out how to add well, so how do I add this? Dang it. There's an image I want to add, but this doesn't add images. What happens if I hit stop screen? Present, share screen. I can do this one. Okay. So are you familiar with just the vague general idea behind Peter Singer's expanding circle?
Tell me about it.
So it's basically Canute's lesson that this priest gave. So like the idea is that love is contained within a scope. And so you can have a
Mm-hmm.
bigger scope of love or a smaller scope of love. And so selfishness is just loving yourself and not loving anything else. But then you can expand that to love your children, you can love your family, you can love your tribe. And but the problem is at every layer of scope, there's always the stuff outside the scope that you don't love. And so that goes back to the concept of favoritism. It's like the Vikings love each other, but they hate the English. You know what I mean?
Yeah, something like that.
And so the Christian idea, the priest, he was trying to teach Canute death is true love because death, you're just giving your nutrients to everything. You're loving the
Right.
worms, the bacteria in the soil. You're loving the ecosystem. Everything is being loved. You're sacrificing yourself and giving of
Mm-hmm.
yourself everything, right? And so maybe Canute at this point, like I think Canute twists it, right? Canute, he evolves like this extreme utilitarianism where it's okay to sacrifice the few to benefit the many, right?
Right. I talk about that in my second Vinland Saga video where it's like maybe
Mm.
it does they don't talk about it expressly, but you almost wonder if his sudden definition that true love is when you're dead, does that mean that, oh, if I kill you, it's justified because I'm just turning you into the pure essence of love?
Exactly. I think that's what they didn't explain it fully, but I think that's the philosophic transition. He's like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to sacrifice some people because I'm creating more love in the process," right?
Right, right. And so for him, it's like all of a sudden genocide is a kind of mercy. It's like
Yes.
I'm doing what's best. I'm killing all these people, yeah, but ultimately it's for the greater good.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
he has this kind of anti-God perspective. He has a bias against the natural
sure.
flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'm not. Did you fully understand what his bias against the natural order is?
Well, from what I understand, is he understands that God is just kind of he sort of comes to this epiphany in season one that God isn't going to help him. God
Mhm.
isn't going to be doing anything. He's there. We're all down here. We're fighting each other. We're causing our own hell. So we got to take responsibility and build up a utopia for ourselves.
Mhm.
To hell with God. To hell with what he thinks. He put
Yeah.
us here to suffer, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Is what Canute's saying.
Right. Right.
There's this. He's really seeing the problem of evil in his own life, and he's like, if God is real, then like he doesn't completely go atheist.
Yeah.
He just goes full rebel against God, and so
Yeah.
he's like, God put us here in this hell, and we're just gonna have to dig ourselves out,
Right.
ignoring God altogether. And so
So.
in that way, he's fighting against God by
Mhm.
like fighting against the natural order that he put in place.
Right. So tell me if you think this is accurate or not. Maybe from Canute's perspective, the natural order is, humans build a village and then humans destroy a village. Humans build order and then humans bring chaos. And it's this
Mm-hmm.
cycle of suffering. And he's trying to build like a meta order. It's like the normal order isn't strong enough to withstand the chaos, and so I'm going to wield the chaos. I'm going to wield the Vikings to create a meta order that can't be destroyed by the chaos of humans.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his utopia that he's
That's
expanding.
right. That's what he's doing, and so but along the way, he was told by his father that the crown is going to corrupt you. It's going to turn you into a monster. And so throughout season 2, he's having these inner dialogues where he sees the severed head of his dad talking to him, trying to taunt him like he's the devil on his shoulder. And like, and so it's like, keep killing, keep killing. Yeah, you're doing it. It's for the greater good. Don't worry about it. And so like, and he does some pretty crazy stuff. Like he poisons his brother just so he can unite the two kingdoms that were divided. And so like, and like, and this was his, this was his beloved brother that he really loved and respected. And he went ahead and poisoned him just so he could unite the kingdoms.
Right. And from Thorfinn's perspective, like, did you even try unity? Like, like
you didn't even try to sit down and have a conversation with your brother and be like, hey, you think it would be good if we merged our kingdoms together? Kind of an idea, but it's like, no, he just had to go and straight poison him.
Yeah. Yeah. Just such a pity. So yeah, Thorkel, like the way I'm looking at this, there's kind of there's two yin yangs going on. So initially I was building up the yin yang between Thorfinn and Thorkel, right? The ultimate Christian versus the ultimate Viking. But then Canute and I'm screwing up his name, Askeladd. Canute and Askeladd, they're kind of two different yin yangs philosophically as well. The way I would describe Canute and Askeladd is Canute is willing to sacrifice the minority to benefit the majority, and Askeladd is willing to sacrifice the majority to benefit the minority. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that definitely sounds fair. It sounds like they're really more concerned about their own individual people. Askeladd throughout the entire series was only concerned about his crew. He didn't care about anything else. He only cared about his crew, and that's what made his crew love him so much. That's why they were willing to go charge into a battle carrying a freaking ship on their shoulders. And because they had their full trust in Askeladd, and Askeladd was just charging into battle, and that's just such a crazy scene. And then he comes, and then they put the boats into the water, and they go around to invade the castle, and then they take all the treasure, and Askeladd's coming out wearing all these jewels and a crown, and it's like,
he's such a stud, right? Wearing a king's crown, like,
exactly,
I'm the boss. Yeah. But with Askeladd, there's a really big plot shift where we get to know more of Askeladd's thinking, right? And Askeladd, from his perspective, the world is full of corrupt people, right? He actually despises the Danes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
His father was a Dane, and he despised his father. He's like corrupt. You know, they just kill people.
Mainly has to do with the fact that his father wasn't very nice to him. To be like originally, he was his bastard child to this poor slave girl who turned out to be like a descendant of King Arthur. And so it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be the one ruling, not these guys.
Right. But I think the interesting thing about Askeladd is he views his mother as a good human, right? And he views his father as a bad human. And then he does this projection game, right? He's like, well, my father represents all of the Danes, and so all the Danes are bad. And my mother, she represents Wales, all the Welsh people. And so all the Welsh are good, right?
Right.
And so he's got this perspective, the whole world can burn. I'm going to die to save Wales because that's where the good people are. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Whereas Canute would say, I'm going to sacrifice Wales to benefit my utopia, this big majority.
Right.
So they had very opposite takes.
It's very flipped utilitarianism going on.
Exactly. But the interesting thing is the character of humanity is so relevant. I think when we're talking about ethics, we often forget how important our judgment of the human's character is, right? If we think your character is that of a murderer, your value goes down, if not negative. And if we think you're a saint, like your value goes way up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And it's really hard to get out of those archetypes. As soon as somebody puts you in that place in their mind, it doesn't matter if you killed somebody at one point, like Thorfinn, for example. If there's a lot of people, especially in like the Baltic War arc, view him as nothing but than a murderer, even though he's trying to be a better person. And it's like as soon as you get put in saint or murderer, it's like you could be a saint, or you could do this really awesome thing, and then people call you a saint, but then you go and do this horrendous thing. For some reason, they're still going to call you a saint. Or if people traditionally know you as a murderer, it doesn't matter how many good deeds you do, they're still going to see you as a murderer.
That's such a good point. I've brainstormed a solution to this that I want to bounce off of you. We're getting taken off track, but this is good.
Sometimes going off track is good.
Yeah. Let's see. How do I add this again? Okay. All right. So I have a blog on Brotherhood, A Path to Peace. And I have a graphic probably at the bottom down here. Or is this it? Okay. So actually the solution is Christianity. Or okay.
Right.
There might be one thing. Well, maybe we can talk about that later. Okay. So do you see an image here, the cycle of revenge?
Yeah, I see the cycle of revenge.
So what I'm trying to articulate,
you got Luke Skywalker versus Kylo Ren going on.
Don't worry about the details. It's the idea
are those action figures? Those look like action figures.
Most likely, yeah. So the idea here is that you've got hero versus villain, and both sides of the equation view themselves as the hero, right? This is this guy, he's frustrated because he thinks he's the hero fighting a villain. This guy has the same exact mentality. I'm the hero fighting this villain, right? And like they get stuck in this tit for tat downward spiral where it's like, how dare you attack me? I must get revenge. And then the other guy's like, how dare you attack me? I must get revenge. And it just keeps going.
It usually starts off with some weird misunderstanding about why somebody did something, or like confusion on some matter. And it's like, instead of sitting down to talk about, okay, why are we confused about this? It's just, oh, you're just the enemy and I need to tear you down.
Yeah, exactly.
It goes back to tribalism. We still have these, even though we've evolved as much as we have, we still have monkey brains that still can only think in selective groups. We can only know so many names. We can only be true friends with so many people. And so we always have this tendency to fall back into tribalism and be like, I'll never be able to understand you, so you're just my enemy forever.
Right. Have you seen Robert Sapolsky's evolution lectures on YouTube?
I don't think I have, no.
Oh, well, your description of this problem is exactly how he described it. You sound as if you've learned about it already, because this whole tit for tat, right? This revenge cycle, in evolutionary logic, they call it tit for tat, and they use software to like measure how tit for tat works. And when they do the software simulations, they have these little creatures that fight each other, and they get stuck in cycles of revenge based on miscommunication. And so what they found is the way to fix it is to introduce forgiveness. Once you introduce forgiveness, the cycle of revenge dissolves, right? So like a Christian principle starts to unwind the cycle.
Mm-hmm. Naruto, yes, very cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what Naruto does. He does the Christian path, the forgiveness path, right?
Sure. Like he's like in Naruto, he's the only one who at one point he's the only one who wants to bring Sasuke back. Everybody else is like, "Oh, Sasuke's a lost cause. We might as well kill him." And it's like even Sakura stoops to this mentality, but Naruto's the only one who's like, "No, there's still good in him. I know it. I just got to beat the crap out of him and convince him that to be good again." Just knock some sense into him and all that.
Right.
And eventually that's sort of what happens. But first he had to understand Sasuke. So like originally in the first part of Naruto, he couldn't understand Sasuke because Sasuke's all like, "Oh, you've never experienced loss. You're alone from the beginning." But then Naruto does experience loss in part 2 when he loses Jiraiya. And so it's like, "Oh, now he's a step closer to finally understanding Sasuke." And so it all begins with this. I need to before you can like talk with somebody, you really need to understand where they're coming from, and a lot of that comes down to shared experience. Because it doesn't matter how well you try to describe something, if you haven't experienced something just like the other person, it's very hard to connect to that person, especially with something as dramatic as losing a loved one. Like if you've never experienced that in your life, if you've never had to deal with the consequences, there's so much just build up and complexity that makes it very hard for some humans to connect. But you got to try anyways.
Right. So the key aspect of this is brotherhood, right? Naruto treats
Mm-hmm.
Sasuke like a brother, and when you boil down brotherhood, what is it? It's basically loving someone as if they're family, right?
Yeah.
And so instead of treating Sasuke like an enemy, he loves his enemy. He loves him as a brother, right?
Right.
And and so when you treat people like that consistently, it unwinds the villain narrative. Like each act
Mm-hmm.
of love, it's like, wait, I thought you're a villain, but you're treating me with love. It's like I'm getting this cognitive dissonance here. And then, I've got to invent a conspiracy theory to like
Mm-hmm.
I got to keep you bucketed as a villain with this, mental gymnastics. But with consistent love, you're just constantly debunking all their conspiracy theories, and then they just have to accept, okay, you're not a villain, and I should treat you better, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, this is kind of a tangent, but this is talking about that cycle you were mentioning. So
Mm-hmm.
you can, once you've got it on the positive direction, you can build a better and better friendship with continuing the pattern in a good direction, right?
Right. Absolutely. And there's just so many people in this world that need to learn that concept. In general, like there's so many anti people out there that they're anti this or anti that, and it gets super annoying sometimes, especially when you see somebody go down that path hard, and it's like, come on, man, I liked you, and then you had to do that. And but when
Yeah.
you and I think the thing that really need to sit down to understand is, even though we have lots of like various different experiences with life, we're still fundamentally human at our core. That's what I'm learning about over here in Japan. It's like, yeah, I have no idea what these people are saying, what's coming out of their mouths. I don't know what this kanji is. What the heck? These weird symbols. But they're still human,
For sure.
fundamentally deep down on inside. They still think like humans, they still feel like humans, they still have passions and ideas, and they still have ambitions of their own. And so for me to treat the Japanese people as anything less than human would be a huge disservice to them. And so there's this crazy habit that one of the great habits of Japanese people that I think Westerners need to adopt is they bow a lot. as a real sign of respect. It's like, even when they're all about respecting people. Even when you go to the grocery store and you're buying groceries, they hand you your receipt, like, arigato
Yeah.
gozaimasu. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you're freaking like giving me my receipt like it's a gift. Okay, holy crap. It's like, I don't know how to respond to that.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
coming
that,
from a Western perspective, they're always
yeah.
so freaking polite. Like, there was this one time where I was driving down the road. I got this guy on a motorcycle knocks on my door, and he's like, he in the best way he can, he tries to tell me that my door isn't fully closed. So it's like, oh, I'd never get that in America. So I had to go and do that. It's like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah. I spent 2 years, well, I spent 2 years as a missionary in Taiwan, and I spent 2 years as an English teacher in Taiwan. And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely there's a lot of things that I feel like, there's a lot we can learn from each other. I totally agree with that.
Absolutely. It's so nice to go and experience a different person's culture. And
Yeah.
like it's like, I really need to get more into Buddhism and Shintoism while I'm out here, because the more I study those things, the more that I realize that even though I'm a Mormon, there's still a lot of connections that can be made. I think a lot of it goes back to the collective unconscious. There's so many things that we can connect dots that we didn't think we could connect dots to.
Yeah, for sure. Well, should we get into the ethics of this?
Sure.
I think,
I think what could be interesting is talking about how people get into these revenge spirals to begin with, because as I don't know about you, but I had a really weird epiphany when I was watching Vinland Saga. You had this very Christian experience with it. I had a bit of an antichrist experience with it, because, like,
wow, that's interesting.
well, because I've been reading way too much Nietzsche, and I was
Okay, okay.
I've read his book. I've read his book, The Antichrist, and
Mhm.
but what's interesting about, and so I was drawing all these parallels with it, but one of the main things that I got out of it is people take revenge in many different ways. Like, I don't think Nietzsche was, even though he called himself an antichrist, I think that was more of like a boastful thing. He wasn't like super anti-Christ, like the actual person Christ. He actually really admired him. He called him a free spirit and all that. It was the way that Christians carry on his teachings that really got distorted. And so a lot of it comes back to, I drew a lot of parallelisms with slave mentality. When you're being oppressed by these people, you start to imagine revenge fantasies in your head. And that's what
Mhm.
some Christians do in the show. And like, when the Vikings invade this little house in the middle of winter, before that they're talking about how evil the Vikings are, and like, oh, don't worry, they're going to go to hell, and one day the second coming's going to happen and they're just going to get wiped off the face of the planet. And that's them putting revenge fantasies into their kids' heads. And so
Mhm.
there's lots of different ways to, like, it's revenge doesn't just come out in physical ways. It can also be mental. It can be, you have this revenge fantasy that one day my God is going to come in and destroy your God, kind of an idea. Like, oh, my God, Yahweh is so superior to these Norse gods like Odin and Thor. He's going to come in and destroy you, destroy your gods, and all
Mhm.
that. Meanwhile, the Vikings have the same kind of mentality where they're constantly talking about how, oh, Thor is so much better than Jesus, and we're gonna send you guys all to, we're gonna force you guys into Valhalla and all that. And so that
Yeah.
those were the interesting ways that I drew comparisons. Is it's like,
Mhm.
no matter which side you are, there's always going to be a tribal mentality going on inside your head, where you're going to try
Mhm.
to, and it's like, yeah, people still think that way today. Even a lot of Christians, they still have those revenge fantasies, even if you're not willing to carry out revenge. you're still there's still the sin of thinking revenge, you know? It's like, as Jesus said, you can't just you can't just, it's not just about going after a woman and all that. If you just look at her and you just have that thought of lust, that's still
Mhm.
sinning, kind of an idea. If you
I like that
if
a
you're
lot.
looking at, yeah, if you're looking at, and it's interesting how much people forget about, a lot of Christians forget about the teachings of Jesus that are all about stop viewing people as your enemies. And it's like when Paul was talking to Romans, he wasn't like, "Oh, your gods suck." He was like, "Hey, you know that monument to the unknown God? Yeah, I'm going to tell you about him." He tried to connect to people. He tried to understand where they're coming from and be like, "Yeah, I'm not going to disregard your beliefs. I'm going to sit here and be like, how can we make connections?" Kind of an
Mhm.
idea. And that's something that a lot of people need to learn, is how to make those connections and try to, instead of trying to destroy other people's ideas and beliefs and try to take revenge on them and have these revenge fantasies, how can we connect the dots here? Because you'd be surprised what kind of dots you can connect.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that it kind of goes back to what we are saying about like the how you view the someone's character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like if the religious mentality, if they tell you that, you know, people outside your religion are evil, then you'll be like, well, it's okay for God to like massacre these people because they're kind of scum. You
Right.
know what I mean? That's like it defies the loving your neighbor kind of a thing. So
Definitely.
so like on this chart, I have religion, right? Do you see religion on
Mm-hmm.
the circle? And so the
Yeah,
interesting,
it's pretty far up there.
yeah. So like compared to like tribalism, religion is awesome. It's like, you know, you can
Right.
make friends with Japanese Mormons, and you go to a church in Japan,
Yeah,
you're
I think it's freaking awesome that there are church people here, and it's like, yeah, I don't know what they're saying, but you know, they still pass the sacrament, they still say amen, they still, you know, have priesthood meeting, relief society meeting, Sunday school. And so I think it's awesome being in a religion where I can go and not feel like I'm alone, and like, yeah, I still don't know what you
yeah,
guys are saying, but it's cool how everything is still pretty, I'm still able to relate to things.
yeah.
And that's
So
what I
one,
would also hope to expand towards Buddhists and Shintoists.
mm.
So like maybe I need
So
to figure out what, if there are any like Buddhist meetings going on or anything like that, and try to attend one.
that would be a great way to build connection for sure.
Right.
But what I want to articulate with this layer of religion, religion has a superpower. When you go to church, what do you call each other? You say brother and sister, right? You
Right.
refer you refer to people at church as brother and sister. So what you're doing, you're hacking into the concept of brotherhood inside your brain, right? And so
Hmm.
you're instantly building a tribe with people who do not have a genetic relationship to you, right?
Right.
And so instantly, these people, it's like, okay, so all of the Mormons are the good people. You know, the Japanese Mormons are the good people, the American Mormons, the Latin America Mormons, these are all the good
Hmm.
people. But then the danger is all of the
Right.
non-Mormon Japanese are the bad ones. All the non-Mormon
Sure.
Americans are the bad ones. That's the risk.
Well, there's still always, I think no matter what, there's always going to be that monkey tribal brain going on in the back, that like, sure, you're building up these layers, but there's, the tribe is still a part of the layers. And so it's about kind of putting that to the side and trying to just view people like, even if, I think if I had stayed in Utah my whole life, or even just stayed in America my whole life, just experiencing American things, like I would like, first coming over here, I thought it was the weirdest thing. Like, why would you be Japanese and Mormon when like it's like, when the majority of people are Buddhists over here, and it's like, oh, you're Japanese, but you're adopting this weird American religion. okay, but it's still interesting to come over here and experience that. But then you still need to escape the religion bubble because, okay, now I'm here, I'm experiencing that they still do the same religion as I do. But now I need to experience that they're doing that other people outside the religion are still experiencing humanity the same way I experience it.
Exactly. If you can connect at that human layer, you create like the biggest tribe possible. There's no enemies, right? What is the line from Vinland Saga? You have no enemies.
Mm-hmm. You try to view your tribe as the human tribe. It's like I'm not the white tribe. I'm not the American tribe. I'm just the human tribe. Hmm.
Right. And so yeah, I had a
I have
yeah,
no enemies. Yeah.
you were saying I was
It's
inspired
about
by
that idea of going beyond good and evil. It's about truly just seeing past whatever sins or good deeds somebody's committed and just viewing them as a friend as best you
Mhm.
can.
Right. So I'm gonna go somewhere controversial right now. Are you ready for a controversy? Oh dang, we got a big lag.
I like controversial things.
Okay.
I like controversial things. Give it to me.
Okay. So when it comes to religion, I feel like you can measure you can measure a religion against how universal it is. So some religions might have smaller scopes of love, and some religions might have bigger scopes of love. And and the next
Mm-hmm.
layer of controversy is the Bible itself is not a coherent text. Okay. So the Old Testament is extremely tribal. The Old Testament has a very narrow scope of love. You know, it's just the Israelites. The Israelites are the good guys. The Philistines, it's okay to genocide them. The Amalekites, it's okay to genocide them. The Ammonites, it's okay to genocide them. It's just the Israelites. This is where the good stuff is. You know what I mean? Uh, are you still there? I feel like I lost you. Uh-oh. Hello? Hmm. Well, I think, are you back now?
Yeah, sorry. That went through a bit of a bad connection. So you're talking about how the Old Testament can be super tribal itself, and how it's like a lot of it is, oh yeah, go ahead and genocide those people. Who cares? Go ahead and shout, and their walls will come down. And it's like,
It-
holy crap! How do you go through Joshua and Judges and be like, wow, these people are so freaking, and not say, wow, these people are so freaking tribal. They only care about other Israelites. It's like, who
yeah.
cares about other people? Yeah, I totally get that. And it's a huge problem that Christians and Jews and Muslims have to deal with that they aren't, more often than not, they're not willing to deal with.
Mhm. Yeah. So along those lines, from my perspective, true Christianity sacrifices the Old Testament. The Old Testament is just gone,
Hmm.
like completely gone. Like just forget about it. True Christianity is the four gospels, right? It's Jesus's teachings. Hang out with the sinners, don't judge, turn the other cheek, love your neighbor, love your enemy, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hurt you, and die without fighting back because that's how big your love is. That's true
Right.
Christianity. Anything less than that is corrupted by Old Testament or it's corrupted by Revelations. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's corrupted by something else. True Christianity is just that.
Right. And
And
it's definitely interesting how people like Carl Jung have tried to deal with that problem, where they've tried, where it's sort of like, I mentioned this before, but like in Carl Jung's answer to Job, he believes that God was this unconscious God for so long, but then he confronted Job, and it's like Job, no matter, he couldn't figure out Job. Job was this super righteous guy who was super obedient, but it's like no matter what happened to him, he was still those things. And so it sort of forced him to confront the human suffering of that he had been causing, which eventually gave birth to Jesus.
Mm. So it's kind of
And
Carl
so
Jung is.
that's a super interesting book to read just for that reason, where like, or any book where any kind of theologian tries to deal with, okay, how do we go from the Old Testament God, this super wrathful, vengeful guy who gets super jealous easily, how do we go from that to Jesus Christ in the Bible, who's almost the exact opposite? Because it's a very weird transition going from Old to New Testament, and so it's always cool to read how people try to rectify that.
Sure. So I'm going to posit another category. So we've got Mosaic Judaism,
Sure.
which is kind of Moses style religion, right? Moses, it's like an eye for an eye, justice, revenge, and small in group, and everyone outside is evil. That's Mosaic
hang
Judaism.
on for a second?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. I just had to brighten up the room a little bit. Go ahead.
That's fine. So we've got Mosaic Judaism, which is kind of a small circle of love. And then now I'm gonna expand it to Nephite Christianity, right? In the Book of Mormon, you've got the Nephite culture. The Nephite culture, they kind of expand their moral philosophy a little bit. And so the Nephites, it seems like their philosophy is we will never aggress. We will kind of treat you like a brother. And but we will defend. We will defend with everything we have, right? But we never aggress, and we don't.
They seem like they're put into a very interesting situation there. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, they don't even take revenge, right? There's a key. Revenge has been subtracted from Nephite morality, which is an interesting transition.
Definitely. I think a lot of people view the Book of Mormon as that proper transition between Old and New Testaments. I mean, the Book of Mormon literally starts out in the Old Testament era, and then it ends in the New Testament era. And so it really seems like this cool, because between Old and New Testament, there's like 600 years that are lost, that you got to go and read Maccabees or something like that to figure out what was going on. There was still a lot of revenge fantasies going on there. But yeah, I think the interesting idea of the Book of Mormon is, it's like, sure, it starts off with this family, and then they leave Jerusalem because it's going to be destroyed, and it's like the two older brothers are mean and don't like the younger brothers, and so they're constantly fighting. And then they get to America, and the two sets of brothers split off and create two different sets of tribes. And like the good brothers tribes, they try to stay righteous, and it's like at one point in the book of Enos, you have the one Nephite, Enos, who's like praying for the Lamanites, and it's like, oh please, it's like his heart literally turns to them, and it's a very interesting situation going on there. But then there's a lot of fluctuation going on, where like at one point the Nephites are the wicked ones and the Lamanites are super righteous. It's like, it's not just a one-to-one comparison. There's lots of flip-flopping back and forth, where like at one point Jacob's like, yeah, you guys are being super wicked on this one point, but look at the Lamanites. They're actually doing a good job over there. And there's lots of like trying to get people to repent. And then you get to the war chapters, where it really just seems like the Nephites are really just going all out on being good and righteous, and the Lamanites are going all out on being super wicked. But then it flips again, and then you have this Lamanite, Samuel the Lamanite, coming over and standing on a wall and being like, "Hey guys, Nephites, you're supposed to be the righteous ones. What's going on?" And they're like shooting arrows at him. And then Jesus comes, and all of a sudden everybody's good again. Everybody's righteous. There's no more ites. There's no more enemies. Everybody's just super good friends with each other, and they prosper a lot. But then all of a sudden, both Nephites and Lamanites, just like after a while, they have children that just forget everything, all the teachings, and both tribes just go just way over into the wicked direction. And it's like all of a sudden they're doing cannibalism, and it's like, holy crap. And they're like forcing women and children to eat their husbands. It's like, what the hell is going on, man? It's like, holy crap. I thought this was supposed to be a super chill, nice book. And it's like all of a sudden you're introducing cannibalism and rapes and all that. And then it's like literally Moroni is like the only righteous dude left. And he's like, it's like, holy crap, the last few chapters of the Book of Mormon are so freaking depressing, because it's literally just Moroni. And he's like, I'm the only Christian left, guys. I'm so lonely. Everybody's hunting me. I don't have all my family's dead. It's like I just got these super heavy plates, and that's all I got. And it's like, holy cow, that's how the Book of Mormon ends. And it's like, and so it's all about that, how originally the two older brothers were jealous of the younger brothers, because they thought that their father was favoring them over them, even though the father kept trying to love all his children, because Nephi was being the righteous one.
Right.
They got so jealous of that, and all of a sudden it just spirals into this massive ongoing generations conflict. And it's just like, wow, talk about a butterfly effect. And so it's like, and then you can see that in real life, where like you hold on to this one grudge for too long, and then all of a sudden these two warring factions are just going at each other.
So the way I would think of that is back to my cycle of friendship. So what the Nephites failed to do is they failed to prove that they were not the bad guys. So like they had this, because for some reason the Lamanites kept thinking that these are the villains we need to destroy. Like we don't have a book of the Lamanites' perspective, but for some reason it seemed like the Lamanites were constantly aggressing. You know what I mean? And so
they were constantly digressing. It would be very interesting if one day, like, we got the Book of Layman. It's like, oh, holy cow.
Yeah. So based on these spirals, it's like they kept spiraling downwards. And the Nephites, the Nephites were trying to be good guys, but they never found a way to unwind the spiral.
The problem is they kept that tribal mentality even when they were trying to be the righteous ones. And because of that, it just eventually everything just spiraled out of control.
Exactly.
And so it just goes to show that no matter, even if you're trying to live the best life you can, if in the back of your mind you're still constantly viewing somebody as an enemy, then eventually it's just going to spiral out of control.
That's a very good point. Like the Nephites, they definitely had a superiority complex. Like I think that
absolutely. They saw themselves as so much better than those savage Lamanites. They're so uncivilized, but we're the good ones, you know.
And so how many undocumented offenses were there? Because it was just like, oh, these scum, we're just going to like screw with their farm animals. And we're going to encroach upon their territory. And we're not even going to document it because we're so cool. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
But the interesting thing about the Book of Mormon is the Book of Mormon gives examples of my definition of true Christians. Do you know who I'm thinking of?
Mm-hmm.
The anti-Nephi Lehis.
Oh, right. The Lamanites that got converted to Christianity and decided to bury all their weapons. And
Right.
it's still debated to this day what it means to be an anti-Nephi Lehi. It's like, are they anti-Nephi and Lehi, but they're still Nephites? I don't know. There's lots of discussion on that, but ultimately they join up with the Nephites. And then what's interesting is the war chapters happen, and they want to be able to defend themselves and fight with the Nephites, but they're like, oh wait, we buried our weapons and we made a covenant to never pick up weapons again. And that's when their sons are like, don't worry, Dad, we didn't make that covenant, so we got this. And that's where you get the 2,000 Lamanites who go out, or the 2,000, sorry, not Lamanites, 2,000 stripling warriors that are, the ultimate mama boys, and they go out and they fight, and none of them die, none of them get injured. And it's right. But at the same time, I wonder if the fact that they never got hurt or injured probably built up into this superiority complex in a way.
So
and
now we got
that happens all the time in the Book of Mormon. It's like the Nephites are being super righteous, they prosper, but then they let it get to their head and they're like, yeah, we're just so much better than those other guys. And then they fall again. And it's just rinse and repeat. And it's like, it gets pretty exhausting after a while.
For sure. So I'm very curious, if you're in Japan, you should try to investigate if the guy who wrote Vinland Saga read the Book of Mormon, because Thorfinn is he's a prototype of an anti-Nephi Lehi. He's committed all this bloodshed. He's full of guilt. He's afraid that killing one more person will damn his soul. So he makes an oath to never wield the sword again. And in the process, he becomes a prince of peace, basically. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And then I almost forgot about that one famous story where the anti-Nephi Lehis, after they made their oath and buried their weapons, the Lamanites are coming and they're like, oh, no, what do we do? Well, we buried all our weapons, so they literally just kneel in prayer and allow the Lamanites to come and slaughter them. And it's like, holy crap. And a lot of the Lamanites start to feel really guilty about slaughtering these people that are just kneeling in prayer, and they start to get converted. And it's this super like crazy moment that it like, you can almost parallel that with Thorfinn getting the crap beat out of him with those 100 punches. It's like he's so tired of fighting that he just beat me up, man. I don't even care anymore. I'm not gonna punch back.
Right. And the way I view it is, when you engage in conflict, you're adding fuel to the narrative. Oh yeah, this is a villain. Look, he's getting all aggressive with me. He's confirming he's the villain I need to destroy. But when someone's just kneeling and praying peacefully, like, they're just completely debunking any narrative that this is the bad guy I'm supposed to kill.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to get in contact with the author of Vinland Saga, but if I run into him, I'll have to ask him if he got any inspiration from the anti-Nephi Lehis. But
yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is Thorfinn with his beat up face in the bottom left corner. That's after he peacefully just absorbed 100 punches, proving I'm not your enemy, right? And simultaneously showing strength of character and showing and earning all this respect,
Right. And then it was the guy who was beating him up that was like almost unable to stand, while Thorfinn was the one that was standing tall.
Which is so poetic.
He really, it absolutely is. It's almost like the guy was just beating himself up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to think of it. Your neighbor, treat your neighbor as yourself. You're hurting yourself, right? When you truly love people as a brother, that's like, evolutionarily, this is family. It's your same genes. You hurt your brother, you're hurting yourself. Like like even an atheist could evolutionarily get on in line with that logic. You know what I mean?
Right. Hopefully.
So I wanted to do
Oh man,
an
the trolley.
overview. Yes, I want to do an
Okay.
overview of
The
some
infamous
ethics.
trolley problem. Oh man. All right, let's get into it.
Yes. So this is going to be relevant, but we have to just introduce the concept first. So the trolley problem, do I choose to kill one person to save five? Do I choose to sacrifice the minority to benefit the minority? That's Canute's philosophy. That's utilitarianism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Deontology, I have principles, right? I don't sacrifice anyone. Each person has rights and dignity. I have a duty to respect their right to life. I can't treat people as a means to an end. Therefore, I have to sacrifice the collective for the minority because the minority has rights. I have a duty to respect those rights.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Something like that, yeah. I'd say so.
And so Thorfinn, he's occupying the deontological pathway. Thorfinn, he has a duty to not hurt anyone. So he has a duty to just not be involved. And so that's when you don't even touch the trolley, right? You don't touch the lever. Like, I can't get involved with any of this. And so if Canute wants to sacrifice the minority, go ahead, because I have a duty to not hurt anyone, right?
Right.
So in one of my blogs and videos on morality, I talk about how to break a moral theory. And it's kind of, this is a lot of philosophical sadism, right? It's like, oh, you've got an ethical theory, and let me destroy it, right? So I'm going to give you the tools. All you have to do is exaggerate the trolley problem. So if someone,
Well, that's when the trolley really goes off the rails, you know. When you,
yeah,
it's sort of like, oh, okay, let's just kill infinite people to save this one person, or I could save this one person and let the infinite people live. And it's like at that point, it's just a statistic, you know. That's as the saying goes. One person is one person, but a million people is a statistic.
so okay, let me explain my perspective, and because it sounds like you've got a different angle on this. So
Well,
what I'm
I would
trying to
say I have a different angle on it, but I have lots of thoughts on it. Yeah.
okay, so what I'm trying to communicate here is maybe someone does not want to sacrifice. Maybe someone is willing to let the five die because they don't want to get involved with killing this one person, right? So the deontological individual is like, not my problem, let the five die. But then you increase it to six. Not my problem, let the six die. Increase it to 20. Not my problem, let 20 people die. Once you just keep increasing it, and then the question is, are you going to let the entire world die because you don't want to get your deontological fingers bloodied? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so you're putting a
And
lot of pressure on the deontologist.
oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of people would probably take a Christian spin on this, where they would say the one person is Christ and the million people is us.
Uh-huh. And so that's the Christian perspective. It's okay to
Right.
sacrifice the one for the many.
And that's what gets a lot of people is it's like, oh, you're a religion of about human sacrifice, and there's lots of you got to get into why is sacrifice necessary, and it like this is even something that Carl Jung talks about even in the Answer to Job book. Like he himself had to struggle with that concept, and you know I've had to struggle with it. I've made numerous videos talking about the atonement. But anyways, I think the thing about the trolley problem, at least my angle with it, is it's sort of nobody's ever going to be put into the trolley problem situation. There's a reason why it's metaphorical to begin with. Is it's like you're never going to be put into a situation where you have to kill one person to save all these other people. Like that is an extremely rare circumstance, and you're almost never going to be put into it. And so it definitely, it like while it's fun to think about and theorize, I think
So
it gets so complicated. Like have you seen what is it called, The Good Place? The
no,
TV show The Good Place. It's a really interesting show that's like super philosophical. It's all about the afterlife and what if the afterlife exists, what would be a good afterlife kind of an idea. But they talk about the trolley problem in one episode, and it's sort of like they literally recreate it, and it's like, oh, what if the one person that you're killing was a doctor and only he had the skills to save all these other people, but you just let the train run him over.
right. That goes back to how valuable are these people? Are we
Mm-hmm.
sacrificing a murderer or are we sacrificing a saint, right?
Sure.
And vice versa.
I think the majority of people, if the one guy is a murderer and he's just going to commit more evil acts, the majority of people would say, yeah, go ahead, kill that one guy, get it over it, even if it's not like the socially appropriate answer to give. They're still going to at least think that in their heads.
For sure. Now, I have a massive disagreement with you that we have to address now that you have maligned trolley problems as a phenomenon.
Sure.
So, and I think this is a common perspective, so it's worth addressing. So, in my opinion, almost all of politics is a trolley problem. Every time, okay, this goes to type 1 versus type 2 errors. In statistics, there's always an error. So like a vaccine. Well, this vaccine could save, if we force everyone to do vaccines, we're going to save 1 million people, but the vaccine has side effects and it's going to kill 100 people. Do we kill 100 people in order to save 1 million? That's a trolley problem, right? If we don't do anything, a million die, but we save 100. But if we do the lever, we save 1 million and killed 100, right? The default track
that's the
kills
interesting
1 million.
thing about human biology is there's always going to be side effects of some kind, no matter what kind of drugs you produce. That's why that's why they're legally required to put out 1 million different side effects on things, and it gets to the point. It gets to ludicrous degrees where it's like, oh, may cause diarrhea, may cause suffering and intense agony and death. And oh, okay. So why am I buying this? Because there's still that 1% that it could help you. That 1% chance. It could be super high, it could be super low. It's like it might kill you, but it could also heal you. So
right. And whenever there are finite resources, you've got trade-offs. And whenever there's a trade-off, it's a trolley problem. It's like, are we going to reduce taxes for the rich and then the poor are sacrificed? Or are we going to benefit the poor and attack the rich? That's a trolley. Rich versus poor. Which track do we flip? Abortion. Do we sacrifice the fetus for the mother? Or do we sacrifice the mother for the fetus, etc.? You know what I mean?
Right.
As long as there are trade-offs, as long as resources are finite, every policy is a trolley problem.
That's why you should never get into politics to begin with, because you know what Kafka said that 1 idiot is 1 idiot, 2 idiots is 2 idiots, 1 million idiots is a political party.
Oh no. I have a love-hate relationship with politics. I hate dealing with it, but I feel like it's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, politics gets a lot of bad rap in general, and I don't like politicians in general, but if there weren't politicians, then there would probably be chaos, even more chaos than there already is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that perspective.
And so I guess, I don't know, maybe that right there is a trolley problem. Do we sacrifice an entire political party, or
Yeah, that's a big question. So I can speed through this right here.
I think in general, yes. I think politicians are necessary. What I don't like is political parties. I don't, because that just promotes tribalism.
Say that one more time.
I'm fine with politicians. The thing that I don't like
Yeah.
is political parties, because that's what promotes tribalism.
Yeah. So
Like that's all you get in the media these days is the left bashing the right and the right bashing the left, and it's like, why do we have political parties again?
Yeah, I think the American political system largely needs to be redesigned, but nobody's ready for that conversation.
Right. I'm not entirely sure how the political party system works in Japan. I'll have to do a little bit more research in that. All I know is that the American political party system, they're way too spread out. But in any case, let's get back to this trolley problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to go through some of this real quick so we can get back to Vinland.
Yeah.
This right here, this is a way to break consequentialism or utilitarianism. Utilitarianism, the idea that it's okay to sacrifice the one for the many. Like people do polls, right? You can do a questionnaire. You ask people, is it okay to sacrifice one for five? But then you change the question. You say, are you willing to commit violence against one person in order to save five? Most people say no. I'm not willing to push this guy off of a bridge in order to save five. And so something about flipping a lever, you don't feel guilty, but like pushing someone to their death, you feel guilty.
Right.
And so there's a certain amount of hedonism. I would rather let five people die than feel the pain and agony of guilt. You know what I mean?
Flipping a switch is so easy, whereas trying to push a really fat guy over a bridge is super hard. And but I think it's not just that it's hard to push a guy like that over. I think it's also that you're literally doing physical contact with the person. You're literally right there shoving them onto the tracks. Even if let's say it's a baby, you got the baby in your hands. It's easy to just chuck it onto the tracks, but you can't because you're literally standing there holding it. It's like, oh yeah, it's baby Hitler. Go ahead and toss it. But just the fact that it's a baby, most people wouldn't be able to do it.
For sure. Yeah. And that's our common humanity. We all have an instinct to kind of respect other humans as the default, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this violates consequentialism because, like, why are you not saving the five? Like, if you care about the majority, you should do it, but they don't do it, right? And so they're violating their own principle. Now, virtue ethics is super interesting, and I want to talk more about virtue ethics. Have you delved into like the Aristotelian paradigm much?
Oh my gosh, I think I have at one point, but go ahead and catch me up to speed.
Yeah, so Aristotle, he builds this interesting framework. He transcends the normal paradigm. So like the Christian or the Jewish paradigm is like good versus evil, right? It's a binary bipolar paradigm. Jews versus Philistines, Christians versus everyone else, whatever. Everything is framed
we're the only ones that are going to heaven. Everybody else is doomed to hell.
Exactly.
It's like what this one pastor was like, oh yeah, these Mormons are super nice. It's just a shame they're all going to hell. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad I'm not in your religion.
Right. There's no middle ground. It's just one or the other, right?
No, and that's what's nice about the three kingdoms of glory is there is middle ground. But in any case, yeah, I definitely have a good understanding of Aristotle, at least a decent understanding of Aristotle ethics.
So instead of looking at it as a binary where like gratitude is a virtue and ingratitude is a vice, Aristotle says, what if you have too much gratitude? Too much of a virtue becomes a vice.
Right. Absolutely. You could talk about this in terms of chaos and order, I think, ultimately, if you want to really simplify all this. I mean, Jordan Peterson, of course, talks about this all the time, but like if you have too much chaos, it just turns into anarchy and everybody's killing each other. If you have too much order, you might as well throw everybody into a prison cell because that's what you're doing. And so there needs to be this fine balance between chaos and order in order to have, you know, those prime ethics.
That's a really good way to put it. Jordan Peterson likes
Mm-hmm.
to say, the correct place to be is riding the line between good, or riding the line between chaos and order, and that's the yin yang.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
line.
say between good and evil. You know, I take a very Nietzschean approach to that, where I think we need to get rid of concepts like good and evil altogether and just simply exist and treat others like humans instead of being like, I'm good, you're evil, you're my enemy. You know, you need to go beyond good and evil.
I like that. I like that. So you can see different examples here. The most important example is the first one here, right? Cowardly is, it's a vice because you lack the bravery, and bravery is the virtue. But if
and
you have
I think
too much
you
bravery,
could, if you want to connect this back to Vinland Saga, that's sort of what happened to Canute. He went from cowardly and jumped right over brave and went straight to rash.
yeah, that's one way to put it for sure. And he had to temper it to he had to get that, he had to kind of mix those energies to get the correct amount. And so when we break apart these paradigms, Vinland Saga does something fascinating here where they deify a Viking vice, right? The Vikings worshipped courage. If you die courageously, you go to heaven, right? But what Thorfinn did, he said, actually, running away, that's the virtue. You guys all want to mock us for running from battle. I'm proud of my ancestors who ran away to Vinland, or to Iceland. You know what I mean?
Right, to Iceland. He's proud of the fact that his father did that.
Yeah.
He found a nice girl and wanted to live a quiet, peaceful life, and so that's what he did.
Right. And so you noticed a really good point. Canute, he goes from coward to rash. And what does Thorfinn do? He goes from courageous to nihilistic.
Oh, yeah, he's just a straight nihilist at the beginning of season 2. He doesn't care about anything. It's like he just stands there and lets a guy slash him up, and it's like, yeah, just kill me already. I'm just so done with life in general. I'm so tired. But what he needed to learn was to learn to live, to embrace life. And sometimes that means running, sometimes that means actually holding your ground. And I think that's where he's going to be challenged the most, is when should he be running and when should he be holding his ground and just being like, I mean, you can come at me if you want, but it's not going to end up good for either of us.
Right. So I think the one thing I like to do is try to look at, like, can we reduce these virtues and vices into their parts, right? Are there little parts that build up these virtues? And it's kind of complicated to do, but one way I like to do it is to say, cowardice is not being brave when you're supposed to. Like, there's a time for bravery and you're not being brave at the right time. Courage is being brave at the right time. Rash is being brave at the wrong time, right? But Vinland takes a little bit of a twist on this paradigm. Vinland says being rash is when you don't care about life. And so Thorkill is rash. He doesn't care about life at all. He has too much courage. And then being courageous is kind of being smart. It's like, I'm willing to risk my life for a goal. I'm willing to risk my life for revenge. I'm willing to risk my life to win, to get honor, to glory, prestige, greed. You know what I mean? And then cowardice,
it's a tool, and it all depends on how you use it.
Right. Cowardice is I'm not willing to risk my life for a goal, right? But interestingly, the Thorfinn take on cowardice, he kind of elevates it to a virtue, to where he says, you know, being cowardly, it's actually caring about life and preservation and peace more than anything. And so I'm not going to give up lives, or I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to be brave, because none of those goals are good. The only good goal is peace. The only good goal is not hurting people and not killing and preserving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so courageous becomes a vice, because all of those goals distract you from the good goal of peace.
Mm-hmm.
But nihilism goes back, it's the inverse of rash. Rashness is like, I don't care about life, but I do care about killing. Nihilism is, well, I don't care about life. I don't care about anything. So it's a passive rashness. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's my take on the ethic, the Aristotelian ethics of Vinland Saga.
All right. Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot to think about there. You're getting me thinking about all these crazy scenarios that we're talking about. And I think you definitely have to, well, see where the story goes, but we're definitely going to have to see how these ethics that Thorfinn has built up in himself get tested. I mean, narratively, you got to test it. It's like, okay, you believe in these things. Now let's see if we can break you, see if we can cause you to lose your ethics, kind of a way, kind of a situation. And if you can still withstand it. And I think I'm worried for Thorfinn. I think there's going to be some crazy things that are going to happen to him, that he's going to have to really be like, okay, is this a situation where I got to flee or fight?
Right. Yeah, his peace extremism is
It's
a
like,
pretty,
what is his trolley problem going to be ultimately is the question.
for sure. It's a very difficult
Mm-hmm.
stance to take, to be unwilling to be violent in all circumstances.
Yeah, and especially when you live in a Viking world where all that's going on is violence, it's extremely difficult. It's like Thor's tried to live a peaceful life, but then he got sucked back into it and he ended up dying. And so it's like it's hard to live a peaceful life forever. And so you really just have to run away from the Viking world in general, and that's what Thorfinn is planning to do when he goes to Vinland. And it's like, what kind of people is he going to encounter there? But we'll just have to wait and see.
Right. So we've been going for a while. I think we can. Are you thinking we're getting close to wrapping up here?
Yeah, I think we could wrap it up.
So I have one big point I would like to make before we wrap it up, and maybe see what you think of this. So Thorfinn makes this huge transition, right? He goes from being just super, rash or courageous to get to his goal of revenge, to being this peace extremist, getting abused and whatnot. He starts articulating some of his new philosophy. So he feels like he's in no position to judge, which is a Christian idea. He feels like he has no enemies, a Christian idea. He doesn't want to take up the sword or hurt anyone, a Christian idea. And he's willing to, turn the other cheek, another Christian idea. So he's got all of these ideas in his new philosophy. But there's also a big, strong element of, like, not judging is like a huge part of it. Like, I feel like not judging led him to all the other stuff. You know what I mean? And so I'm dissecting, why does he no longer judge these people? And I think I've figured it out. I don't feel like it was explicit, so I'm curious if you'd agree or disagree. For me, I think the reason is he understands that everyone is violent because, like, all human violence reduces to human blindness, right? And that's also is a Christian concept, damn it. Jesus said, before you judge the person for having a mote in his eye, pull the stick out of your own eye, right? Get rid of your own
Right.
blindness
I'm not
before
entirely
you judge.
sure what it means to what beam and mote mean, but essentially it is that idea that you got something in your eye and it's causing you to be blind to another person's situation. So before you judge another person, and the scriptures say judge righteous judgment,
Yeah.
but you can't do that until you really self-evaluate yourself and figure out what kind of biases am I holding on to? What kind of literally, I think you could say any ideas that are causing you to view somebody as an enemy are most likely false ideas. And so you got to be willing to get rid of those ideas.
Right. That's the mote in your own eye or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Thorfinn discovered the beam that was in his own eye, which was he
Right.
had been so blinded by revenge. He was so single-mindedly, focused, monomaniacally obsessed with
Mm-hmm.
getting Askeladd's head, you know what I mean? And he was willing to do anything. He was blind to others' suffering. He was blind to the atrocities, blind to the killing of Christians, blind to the burning of farms. And then
Mm-hmm.
only after Askad, am I saying that correctly? Askeladd.
Askeladd, yeah.
Only after Askeladd was dead did suddenly the mote was out of his eye, and he's like, holy crap, I've been blind this whole time. Look at all this suffering I created. They had fathers, they had loved ones. I created all this same suffering for them.
Right.
I'm guilty of the same thing that I've been blind to this whole time.
Something that I've been thinking about that comes into my mind every once in a while is like there's this one scene from Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers where like it happens just after they encounter the elephants and those one guys come in and save Frodo and Sam and Gollum from being attacked, and they're like they look at this dead soldier and they're like, you look at this guy and you wonder like, where did he come from? Why did he decide? What decisions led him to this path that he came on, and now he's dead? And it's like, what kind of aspirations did he have? And it's like, what kind of life did he want to lead? And we just took it from him.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm paraphrasing it, but they say
It's
something to that effect.
realizing the loss of their actions.
Mm-hmm. Well, realizing that another person that they just killed is actually a human being who probably who had a life of his own. He wasn't just this NPC that you could just go and kill, and there was no backstory or anything like that. He was a real human. He probably wanted to do something with his life, and you just took that from him.
Right. And so when I look at Vinland Saga through this lens, right? Look at Vinland Saga through the lens of blindness, right? Askeladd, he kills because he's blinded by greed. His lieutenant kills because he's blinded by his love for shedding blood. He just loves, gore. Yeah. The king Canute, he's blinded by his a narcissistic desire for utopia. You know what I mean? Like each character kills because of their own unique blindness. Some people, they're killing for honor. It's like, you disrespected my family, now I have to kill you. You insulted me. Honor, pride, tribalism, all of these different types of blindness. And so it's almost, for me, it's almost poetic. It's teaching you a lesson of, look at all the atrocities that happen due to human blindness, and look at how Thorfinn, he pulls it out of his own eye, and look at that transformation.
It's one of the most crazy transitions in all of anime history, and it's like it's really become a meme of its own, where like you'll have Thorfinn saying, "I have no enemies," and it's just it's really getting a lot of people to want to know what's up with that. What's going on? And it's almost such a profound idea in our day and age.
Yeah, but I think it ultimately goes back to that circle. If you expand your
Hmm.
circle of love wide enough, there's nobody outside of it. And it's the people inside are family, people outside are your enemies. If there's nothing outside, you have no enemies. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Absolutely. So we got to keep trying to expand that circle, and I think I'm doing that by living in a foreign country and trying to understand these people that trying to learn their language and all that. And
Well, good for you, man. I think that's so awesome. I think it's honorable. I think that's hugely valuable. Like when you like I've
mhm.
you can share those lessons over YouTube and like the
Oh,
whole world
definitely.
will get benefit from your experiences. I applaud you and your efforts on that.
Yeah. I don't a lot of people don't realize this, but I actually wear a Buddhist bracelet. Like
Hmm.
that's the symbol for Buddha or something like that.
Mhm.
Around around. So I always got Buddhism with me, man. I got this in
Yeah.
London like a couple of years back, giving charity to a Buddhist monk of some kind. And now I'm here and, I got to figure out what Buddhism is really all about.
That's awesome. Don't forget to learn about Taoism too.
Oh, yeah. And Taoism. Yeah. Oh, Taoism is more of like a philosophy than a religion, like just kind of a way of life. But yeah, Buddhism and Shintoism, those are like the religions, whereas Confucianism and Taoism, those are more just kind of philosophies that you would live
And
by. But
it's definitional. They have scripture or philosophy books, whatever you want
well,
to call them.
yeah, they have books as much as Plato's Republic is a book. But yeah, it's still something I should be getting into more of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Taoism has some interesting philosophical synergies.
Right.
So
I
it's
mean,
probably
I have the Tao Te Ching. I've read
okay.
it. It is a
Yeah,
really interesting book.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you're on board with it then.
Hopefully, yeah. And I'm not too far from a Buddhist temple, so I go there sometimes.
That's cool.
Pretty cool stuff. But anyway, yeah, I think that I can't think of anything more to add to this Vinland Saga conversation. It's been sorry, it's so dark in here for some reason. I hope you guys can
Yeah,
see me well enough. I have my light
you're
on, but I guess it's not very bright.
you're the yin to my yang right here.
Yeah, I'm trying to be your dark shadow
Yeah,
as
yeah.
best I can.
That's good, man. Well, it's been a great discussion. Maybe there'll be more to come.
Yeah, when season 3 drops or something like that, I guess. Or let me know if there's any other anime you want to talk about. I always love talking about anime.
Yeah, for
In
sure,
fact,
man.
I did a poll of which anime I should make a video on next, and I got a Parasite the Maxim one out. So I got to figure out how to make a video on that and figure out
Wow.
how I can make time for that. But anyways, yeah.
You pretty
Yeah,
busy over
that's
there?
yeah, they keep me busy over here. I wasn't making any money on YouTube, so I got to figure out how to figure out some way to make money.
For sure, for sure.
But also I want to try to keep my channel alive somehow, but I'm still trying to figure out how best to go about doing that. But
Yeah.
anyways, so I guess my next video will come out when it comes out, and I'm just so worried about everything else that's going on. But yeah, that's it.
Good deal, man. It's been good to see you.
Yep. All right.
Take care.
You too. Bye.